It is probably just as well that we ended up calling last week's thing in advance because it turns out that I had sort of I don't want to say emergency, unexpectedly necessary parent meeting with the swim team stuff.
Oh.
Like that started at 8, super convenient. So I
Mm-hmm.
would have had to have like wave off at the last minute either way, um, which is so just as well, all things considered. But I missed you guys so much. Hope everyone is well. Um, um, what are we playing now? Shoots and ladders. It's been a while. We have not been able to get in a lot of regular gaming with any of the games, although we were finally starting to pick up a little bit with the Girls Masks game. And unfortunately, I don't think the Apocalypse World one made it past like session 2, which is the fate of so many games eventually. So just because we had too many conflicts, and Friday nights are hard. So now I can't figure out. Missing a game book now. Anyway, okay. If no one has any objections, I am inclined to okay, when we last left our crew, we were looking at this sonar image of something building like up underneath a lot of rock, coral, memish undersea growth. Um, Out in the midst of nowhere, and various unidentified at the time people were heard to comment things like, we should probably call Drifter and Armin, and somebody else saying Armin's not going to be too happy about this, and somebody else saying he will if we can make some money off of it. And that was kind of where we stopped. Uh, if no one has any objections, I'm kind of inclined to just start with, and now everyone's, here and staring at the same thing, and the assembly of crew can be taken sort of as given, as a given.
For granted.
For granted, and we move on past that. Uh, as I said, if no one has any objections, I seem to have lost one of my books. Very annoying. Oh well. Anyway. Oh no, I found it. Anyway. All right. Amusingly, I mean, it's a good problem to have, but I'm misplacing books because I'm losing them under piles of notes from my 5-year-old that say, Dad, I love you so much, you're the best. I
Aww.
mean, if you're going to lose it underneath stuff,
It's kind of the way to do it.
that's a good pile of stuff to misplace things under. And she was, of course, inspired to do this because she found cards that Kaylee had gotten me in the past, and they were all kind of assembled. And she's like, how come Kaylee got these for you and I didn't get you anything? I'm like, I don't know. Why didn't you? And then she decided to rectify the problem. Anyway, all right. So we begin, I think. Do we recall what the name of this pilot was? The guy that we had retained to take you guys.
Hi, on the boat.
The guy on the
Coral.
boat. Was it Coral?
Well,
Something.
I had kind of named him Coral after the James Bond character, but
Right. In any case, we have this guy. Inexplicably in the television series being played by Tom Waits. Like, how did they get Tom Waits for this? Why did they get Tom Waits for this? No one knows. It's a mystery. But he's kind of you guys are more looking at the sonar thing, uh, and figuring out like, I guess just sort of we begin with you just kind of looking at the screen. So what's the plan? What this seems to be where the Aleph key brought you. What you gonna do about it? Having assembled all the Avengers.
Sorry, ramping up brain.
Ramping up brain. Brain spinning up. Game loading.
That's not
Please
a
wait.
good sound.
No, it's not a good sound. I'm gonna close. Well, I'm gonna minimize this picture here for a little bit. Just kind of put it over here next to where I want to put it. I'll put it over here by mem. Just minimize that for a little bit because I'm looking at some timers here. Awakening the Deep. I think we can call Exploring Men as. I think we'll leave this one over here as a potential problem though. Leave that over there. I was thinking an older, more grizzled Tom Waits, but either way, I'm fine. I'm fine with that. So there appears to be a thing. It appears to have been here for quite some time. It only shows up on sonar when the key resonates, which is, well, okay, that's not entirely true. The vague impression of it can
Once you know where to look.
Can be, yeah, if you want you to know where to look, you can get a vague impression of it, but nothing that anybody would really have spotted just randomly. It's for all intents and purposes crystal clear if the key was, when the key by comparison is resonating. But if you look for it, yeah, you can make out it's right there, yeah, kind of that kind of thing. So backing up, not exactly a flashback or anything like that, but Kay, what do we want here? Like, actually, I should take that back because the people in the boat were Kay and Sun and Monster. What's the what are we hoping for? What's the want here?
I think that the original desire was to locate objects that were to the device, with the idea that would provide us the next clue,
Right.
or the next step.
Someplace,
And that we have to not just be here, that there's something down there we need to.
Yeah.
Right. We were trying to. Was this? We were trying to find. Trying to find one of the locations that was on Monster's list of places to research. Was that where we found this through?
No, there was a college student ranting about.
Oh, right.
Well, there was your college student plus stuff that Crazy Frim. Crazy Frim had sort of indicated that there'd be stuff worth listening to, worth knowing. It wasn't the ranting college student. It was the drunken, ranting, but in a drunken rant rather than a street corner preacher rant. Going on about this and that, which got you kind of going in the general direction, and then a little bit of attunement with the key and various hijinks.
Well, and then the where aren't there people?
Right. where aren't there
Fi.
people that in places where there would by any other criteria should be people. This would be certainly one of those places, and near the Great Deeps where, according to our pickled grad student, certainly should be just rife with all kinds of stuff that we can't get our hands on, or that they pretend is not there. But first, this, which led you here, which led you to this thing, and trying to figure out, what to do next, or what to do
We should
about
be
it.
seeing if they have other key.
Well, I mean, and it's from a purely fiduciary consideration, a structure of this size, if it is sort of precursor, tech type stuff, that's a lot of space to be full of things that may be valuable. So there's potentially a lot of benefit here. The mission, the job, sort of self-dictated as it is, has a fairly decent payoff. Should you figure out how to pull it off. So it's really just a question of, you've got this thing, it's under layers of rock. If you want in, how do you go about that? Mentally, psychically, spiritually wake the whole place up and say open sesame, or
Ecumenically.
Spiritually, linguistically, ecumenically. Figure out the place that looks most like a door and put some depth charges on it and see if you can blow the door, blow the rock away from an entrance. Hire contractors. There's downsides there. A number of downsides there.
Downsides, yeah. How good is the sonar and stuff on the boat?
I mean, it's not a. It's
How
neither.
deep is this?
I mean, this isn't a boat. I should make this really clear. This is a sub. I mean, I'm going to say, let's put it this way. You are not in Marianas Trench territory, because that's off to the left and enormous. You're at sort of open ocean bottom, whatever that would typically mean. A very little bit of light gets down, in theory. You're able, at the distance that you are from the outcropping, sort of vaguely out through the viewport, able to make out the general outline of the rock outcropping. You think, sort of, if you squint and shade your eyes from the instrument panel. But the sonar doesn't have to be. I mean, you're down here, so it's a it's a big version of a weird sci-fi submarine of the sort you might see on Naboo. Big-ish. It's the submarine version of the boat that they.
Ship.
What's that? Say it again.
Well, I mean, we're in a spaceship. It's a water ship.
Yeah, it's not as big. It's not as big by any stretch as a fast buck, but it would be like call it the submarine equivalent of the boat that they used to hunt jaws, with all the implications that might have with it. but in terms of size, capacity, it's not a big thing, but it's because it's meant to be a day hired excursion type of craft. So, and also the guy who runs the thing also probably sleeps on here. So it's got that, it's about that big. And we can assume for the sake of argument that you guys, have, when you went back and grabbed Armin and Drifter, suitable pressurized suits were acquired. Let that stand for armor, all that kind of stuff. So, the question is just, well, we're here. What now? As your current acting hired pilot would say.
Do others have opinions?
I mean, I always have opinions, but whether or not anybody wants to hear them, entirely different matter.
Well,
we can hear them. We won't necessarily listen to them.
I just have to. I mean, this is potentially a big pile of money covered in rocks from Armin's point of view. Even if, or especially if there's a key in there, another key, but because the key becomes a moot point if there's other stuff that can also be extracted and brought out in terms of artifacts and stuff like that, because that stuff can be shifted profitably. So there's probably, I mean, the real question is access, and then what do you do? What do you do next, and that kind of thing.
Well, if we take the basics as we want to find, we're there to find interesting stuff aboard this vessel.
If you want to,
can we walk through the basic job?
The job, as such, is loot the place. Like, I mean, if you look at it from that point of view, there's a mansion with some pretty good, if static, security, covered in a layer of rock.
We assume.
Well, covered in a layer of rock is pretty good security. It doesn't work for a living, breathing, domicile because, again, covered in a layer of rock. But as far as a thing that will keep people out, it's good security being covered in a layer of rock. But it's a place with valuables inside that you want to get the valuables out. So it's a big vault, it's a big bank, it's a big space station. It's a place to hit and get stuff out of. So if that being what it is, if you turn in your hymnals to page 148, the next question becomes like, okay, so how do we get in? How do we deal with this thing?
I would suggest this as subtly as possible.
Well, yeah. I mean, you
draws less. I mean, like intentionally trying not to draw attention. It would be what I'm going for there.
One thing, yeah, you wouldn't want to. There's the potential of external attention from Memish authorities, certainly from Imperial or starts with an H, and it's right out of my head. Damn it.
Hegemony.
Hegemonic attention. There is a timer sitting up there called Wake the Deep or something similar.
That was the one that I was more worried about.
Yeah, I kind of thought that might have been what was on your mind, but I wanted to point out there's a few other things that could also be disturbed here. But that's probably the most, it's certainly the one that's closest in your neighborhood. Not to get too mystic about it, the potential that you could make the building angry. That's not really even mystic. That's just, ancient security systems might be awoke, things like that. So that's what's out there on the.
Having just finished healing my brain damage.
You would prefer not
I would
to.
prefer no more Shivering Madness.
Yeah, you'd prefer not to immediately jump back into massive minds that man was not meant to know. If you are given the choice, which frequently in those circumstances one is not, but there is a I can't remember the name of the game right now, but it's a it's a Cthulhu. It's a sort of a Cthulhu riff, and it takes Cthulhu to its like ultimate conclusion. If you fight anything that's of the mythos, you just die. And the game itself is predicated on the concept that the game ends when everybody dies. So it's just a story of how you die.
How everybody died.
How everybody died. That's the game. And that sound, I mean, it's Cthulhu, so it's never really tripped my trigger that hard anyway, but somebody took that and did a what is mind-boggling to me, I guess, a little bit, a fantasy spin-off of that. It starts with a T. I can't remember what it's called. Maybe it's The Forest or something. But the basic idea is that you're people in a village on the edge of an ancient forest, and for some reason and everybody's got their own reasons for questing into this forest to achieve a goal or wreak vengeance upon something, my bride was taken from me or whatever, from some evil within the forest. And they have like 14 different default setups for whatever is in there. Okay? But, and this is key, the mechanics that it's based on are exactly identical to the other game, which is to say, you're all doomed and will die. There's no question as you just die. And people are playing the crap out of this. And
which people?
Well, Gauntlet, it's very popular on Gauntlet, so I hear about it on there a lot. But I mean, these are guys who run 270 games a month. They're not playing much. They're playing a lot of this stuff. And for whatever reason, this is one of the things on their radar that's like.
Well, I mean, I can see the value there if what the game allows you to do is find, if that is making that story for that character, and it's not just I died because I rolled a shitty roll on my shield.
It's never like, that.
I died because I did something and it had this result, and that's the end of the story, and that can be satisfying.
It can be.
Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
It can be cathartic. I'm not sure.
It's like this. Indie gamers, given the choice for their character of $50 or a punch in the face, will take a punch in the face every time.
That is. I don't want to paint with too broad a brush, but there's definitely a. I would say that indie gamers will take that punch to the face far more often than they'll take the 50. They still will occasionally enjoy the 50.
This was received wisdom to me from a professional game designer in that scene.
I think that's probably fair.
Well, just not to put too fine a point on it, but take a look at some of the things that we enjoyed doing, playing the Masks game.
Sure.
Right? I want to fail. I want this to turn into a horribly embarrassing, tragic, gut-wrenching thing that happens to me, because that's part of the fun.
Yeah, and I get that. But the drama of my dad doesn't listen to me is a little bit different than we all die alone and cold and wet in the forest.
No, the goal is to die well.
I guess.
I don't know. You guys, any of you watching Lucifer?
No, I'm not. I know I should, because a lot of people say
it had a very nice line about, let's just say, dying well.
Yeah.
By his standards.
Yeah, and I don't want to misplay. I would say the only thing I would say to Bill's observation, because again, I don't want to paint with too broad a brush, but I do agree. I would say that it isn't necessarily that they will always pick the punch in the face, but I feel as though there is a certain tendency to start to feel a bit whorish and cheap if they take the 50 too often. Like, we're having too much easy fun. I need to pay for it by having some hard fun, which
an odd choice of paying it forward.
I guess, sort of. And I'm sure that I would enjoy a good turn on it. It's just I can't see seeking it out nonstop. I don't know how I got to that, but it was something about Cthulhu in the Deep and
so I will say two things.
Avoiding that.
One of them is on topic, and one of them is not. I'll start with the one that's not, which is the last game day. We played Pandemic Cthulhu.
Okay.
So imagine rather than a global map and epidemics rising all around the globe, instead it's a map of a series of villages in Massachusetts, and you've got your investigators trying to put down rising cults and shoggoths appearing and trying to summon the old ones that have an effect when they are summoned.
I mean, not to spoil a game that if you've either already played it or you're not going to, but the Pandemic Legacy, the big spin is like one of the 4 constantly recurring viruses mutates and becomes the zombie plague, and it cannot be eradicated. You can't clear it. You can only shoot it. I mean, that's at least how it starts. So, I mean, Cthulhu is really a pretty short step away from that as a concept. So I'm not saying anyway. The other thing that was that will nicely bring us back on topic.
Right. And so I left some notes in Discord chat for that as well.
Oh, on Cthulhu.
No, for the actual game we're playing right now.
What?
Oh, what? Now I have to go to the Discord chat.
Oh, we have suggestions. Oh. Legal rights to.
Yeah, so I was just going to say we should infiltrate, but
I like.
Maybe that's too on point.
Bill's put it in thought. Go ahead and say what you were going to say though, Dave. And I'm reading.
Oh, I was just going to say, since we need to choose a modality for the job, I was going to say infiltrate if we don't want to assault. So, just to move that forward. But I'm reading notes as well.
I feel that if there's a score and it's kicking off, the engagement role really is we got in.
Well, it's mostly a question of how. So, I mean, we can kind of meld these things. So, Bill's got some great. I like, because nobody would ever think of this, just the legal rights to dig the site up. That's a fun, and God, what would that even be? I mean, because you think about it, it's as the start of a heist, we're just going to legally decide that we're going to have this thing. I guess.
Well, I'm sure that we could do something, between social. Myself and the university.
I mean,
what I'm getting at is that maybe this. I think the question of approach is the score really we do a temple run and get to the defenses of this place, or is the score we outwit and outmaneuver anyone else trying to get to the site, and it's really more of a kind of a financial or political game. And characters here can do some of these things. I'm just saying that feels like the question that's
absolutely. And I think some of it is determined somewhat by what you guys end up doing. So it's fair to say thinking for a second. It's fair to say that the place has been left undiscovered, has been gone undiscovered for a good long while. So, racing someone to the destination is not immediately in the cards, depending on what you do. If you say we have this find and we're going to go through channels and we're going to lay legal claim, so that we have, for all intents and purposes, the hegemony and the memish on our side, perhaps more so the former than the latter, that then introduces some issues where we may actually be kind of working against other parties that have suddenly become interested. And certainly other people are interested in the key. But I love the idea, because when I'm immediately, I mean, I'll admit, it's, starting out at 8 o'clock on a Monday night after a long day. So when I look at a big pile of rock with a building inside, I don't immediately think, let's get in, let's begin this heist with a social role. That's not exactly, I mean, my first thought would be how. And Bill's first suggestion is, well, it would look like this.
Bureaucracy.
Yeah. It would look like this, and that's genius. And I love it. This goes back to your brilliant, here's what every single skill can do in a ship fight. logistical consideration. How do people drill through rock on a planet? So I'm not sure if, I mean, that's certainly a consideration, but there may be some.
So there's 5 of 6 ways to handle it. Again, in Discord chat.
Yeah. By the rights or outmaneuver the competitors. Assault. Yeah, we have to fight them. Well, assault could also be we blow the rock out, like we just go in very unsubtly, whatever that looks like, big explosions. With the likelihood, I mean, I think of assault as being the noisy way in that attracts attention. So if that's
that's my least favorite.
Yeah, the noisy way in that attracts attention could be, well, in some cases would be, well, like what we did on the wreck with the wreckers, which is noisy way in that attracts. This way is like a big explosion that possibly attracts hammerhead sharks with, you know, Cthulhu and stuff.
Or anybody in the area who's got sonar saying, "What the hell was that?"
Yeah. Deception or social is buying the rights, alternate version. Infiltration, yeah, Indiana Jones our way in, definitely. Like, kind of like just literally tomb raiding. Mystic, yeah, attuning the temple is, you know, that's a big
ballsy.
It's ballsy, and I like it because of that, because it's like, let's just see if we can knock. I mean, that's the psychic version of let's see if we can knock. And I'm with Bill. I have a lot of question marks around what transport might look like, and I don't know it's a problem we need to solve when we have five other quite useful and genre appropriate ways in.
I think transport is someone found out we're here and didn't get here in time to contest our claim, but is interested in pirating our haul as we get away.
Yeah, that's maybe the next job. Getting off Mem with whatever we got.
Okay, so who has a strong feeling about one of these?
One gets people who didn't get a lot of play the last 2 times the most play.
Yes, I am.
That's fair.
I am 100% behind that, and thank you for the very meta but entirely appropriate response. So that speaks to let's point at Armin and Drifter for this.
What did I do?
Well, you haven't. You spent you spent a lot of time listening last session. Let's put it that way, and so did Armin. So
I'm actually okay with that. I kind of want to see like Armin at the center of a heist. Like he's always at the edges.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Out and do stuff. But I'm actually really interested in seeing Armin and Kay and Sun work together. I would love to see those 3 cook up something just as a team. I mean, Monster, you can be in too.
I am good with beating in whatever heads you suggest. So.
Yeah, I will shine during that transport phase. Let me have that.
Okay, sounds good to me.
I agree, because I mean I've had a lot of screen time the last couple of days, so I would love to see that. I would love to see the doctor and the bureaucrat, you know, take something that you and I would consider a physical challenge and just.
Yeah, I'm down with that. So Armin, plan man with the plan.
Man with plan.
Men with multiple plans. Do we let's back this up then. Do we actually start in the ship, or are we immediately flashing, or is the I mean, so I think we still start in the same place. But if we do start with like going through to some degree channels, whether they be bribery channels or official paperwork channels, we're here in the water, and the question is only whether or not we're racing ahead of authorities that were, you know, that are competitors out to stop us, or everything is kosher and we're here, and you know, look everyone, here's the new section of the planet that we now own, or something. I don't know.
It's not that we own it. It's just that we have salvage rights.
Salvage rights, sure. So.
We found it first, ignoring the Memish.
What? which, spoken like a true colonizer.
Yes.
What so what do you want to do? What is the because we can have done this all back on shore and then now we're in the water and
Yeah.
the role has determined like what our current circumstances, who's behind us, who's coming up behind us, and things like that.
Yeah. As far as the plans, I see this like I would want to do more of the infiltration
Okay.
than the social.
Okay.
Just for that point.
Okay.
Which means the entry point is whatever's the
There's a lot more, maybe a lot more sonar pinging, and so we're getting in here without really, it's like, so I picture you guys kind of on the ship, or at least having this discussion one way or the other, weighing the pros and cons of this various thing, and a couple of people suggesting, well, do we want to just go through channels? Do we want to use bribery? So you are going, maybe not. But what's Armin's like take on that as an approach that instead leads us towards this other thing, towards this sort of Indiana Jonesy infiltration type of thing? When the idea of either bribery or bureaucracy is put forward with a nod or take it away, Armin kind of gesture. It sounds like Armin's got reasons for thinking that's maybe not such a hot idea. So I'd like to hear what those are, just because that sort of.
No, I think it's a fine idea. I just wanted to go with the option that made the more exciting.
Okay. All right. So it's not. It's more of a meta thing than than anything else. Okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So.
So that could just be, oh yes, there are salvage rights, but they're not on paper.
So it's a question. Right. Go ahead.
It's more of a understanding amongst people.
Okay. Once the beacons are down and that kind of thing. It's just that people are only understanding when they need to be understanding. So potential risk there. Anyway. All right. Okay. In that case, let's just see where we're at. Infiltration, trespass unseen. What's the point of infiltration then? Since we're putting this out there, what do we see as the way that we figure out, oh, we could probably get in this way, or what we're trying? Is there a like do we sonar things to like crazy until we find an entrance, or
does the thing look like it was kind of buried in an underwater avalanche, or
no? It's
more that it was kind of built into.
It was. We'll get this thing back up here. So again, this is the sonar image, but it's out here on the sort of edge of a cliff, underwater cliff, and covered. It's not. It minimizes the level of coverage and stuff to say it's encrusted, because it's deeper than that, but it really does look like the thing was just
intentionally camouflaged.
It's probably a mix of that and then just literal thousands of years of just. It's probably a mix of like that sort of verdigris type of corrosion mixed with the actual accumulation of
so if
stones,
at least
coral, whatever.
even if initially it was kind of a camouflage thing, there should still be access ways, ventilation shafts, or
access tunnels that just use like basically air pressure, and like you could come from underneath, like up through the cliff maybe, and eventually if you swim far enough, then the water's just not there anymore because the air's holding up.
Sort of the equivalent of think of when the folks in the Mummy get to Hamunaptra, which has been buried in the sands. There's still kind of structures above ground that they're breaking into and using as a way to get
Oh,
down
yeah,
below.
yeah, I like that. I like that. So it's just a matter of figuring out what part of it is uselessly buried and what part, with a little bit of digging, a little bit of prying, a little bit of leverage, would actually get you a hole that drops you right down into a chamber. Okay. The complication there, of course, being underwater. But nothing like this is built. Here's the thing: it's either completely flooded inside, in which case it doesn't matter, or it's going to have protections against. It's going to have the equivalent of like airlocks that prevent any opening to the ocean from completely flooding the whole thing, assuming that they all still work, or any of it still works. So yeah, I like that. No, I like that. Honestly, I like the Hamanatra analogy. So I think, I mean, this isn't based on a skill of any kind, but I'm still thinking that Margie's going to end up rolling this die. Partly because if it's bad, then she'll be like, I'm not rolling the rest of the session. So we have an infiltration.
I want full party consent before I roll anything.
So the engagement roll is a fortune roll. Starts with 1d for just sheer luck. Is this operation particularly bold or daring?
Until the clocks start ticking.
Not until the clocks start ticking. I think this is a pretty straightforward. Like, we're going to just quietly come in here. We're not going to tell anybody.
I don't know. Raiding an underground, multi-thousand-year-old thing underwater. You know,
that seems
bold and daring.
I mean, sure.
Want this to be harder?
Until we look up on the ridge above us and see the Memish looking down upon us.
I was gonna say, anything that involves the phrase tomb robbing has to be a little daring.
Okay, I'll put in a die for daring. It's certainly not. It's not overly complex. We're going to get in here and poke at the holes until we can try to get it. I don't think it's particularly complex. Does the plan's detail expose a vulnerability of the target or hit them where they're weakest? I don't think so. The place is. I mean, I don't think of it as exploiting a weakness. I think of it as exploiting its only possible points of access, which isn't really an exploitation. It's just sort of taking
Which
away.
are the weakest parts?
I mean, if you want the die, I can give you the die. I mean, somebody come up with something that's weakest, like, using the only part, but like, you've got this picture here for inspiration, like, and think like an archaeologist. Like, what's the Hominoptera equivalent of, like, we pulled a stone out of the roof of this building, or knocked a window in, or we found a garbage chute that we're now using as an ingress point, or if it's the weakest point, then what's the weakest point that we're using for this thing to get in?
The weakest point is on the right hand side there, the spine that comes up.
Ping what you're talking about. If you just hold down the mouse on that spot, it should ping. No?
Do you mean this one, Mom?
There's nobody pinging. Like this thing?
Yeah. I think
okay.
Yeah, or at the base of it where it joins. That's going to be the weak part structurally.
Okay. All right. I buy that for $1. Just because it's maybe cracking? Like, it's just an aging out kind of section? That
it's actually, no, it's because of the way water flows. So the water is going to be flowing through there with more force than it flows around the outside. And so there's fewer plant and animal material that can live in a high, and so it's going to have less stuff encrusted on it.
Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. Sure. It's just it's a spot with a lot of flow.
It's like things living in the surf zone, compared to things that, live, where the sea is calmer.
Okay. All right. I like it. We'll take it for an extra die. Can any of your friends
And
go ahead, Bill?
I sent you a DM with an optional weak spot as well if you're
Ooh.
interested in playing on that.
Let me DM. Oh my god. Oh, I see. uh
You sound hesitant, so just go ahead.
No, I'm not hesitant at all. I most like on the one hand I was like, okay, we can go with Margie's thing, or what do you guys can vote between these two, but I kind of feel like this is all right. I'm just gonna, if you don't mind, Bill, I'm just gonna copy paste this into the chat so you guys can see it and see what you think.
Or just narrate it.
Well,
yeah, either way is fine.
Yeah. Take a look at the Scum and Villainy chat. Like they just have a log of all the stuff that they tried that did not work. But you know, that's all true. But what killed them? And you know, I think it all kind of rolls into this. Like first, kind of, it's like, maybe the first place that you guys immediately try, like it's got the suit, and you're like, all right, so we're not trying this one, and we're not trying these other ones that apparently didn't kill them but also didn't work. That leaves here. Yeah, ping the map. Okay. I like that. It's just a nice detail. It's like, oh, this place hasn't gone undiscovered. It's just gone unopened successfully. We would hope. Be a shame to get in there and find the whole thing empty. Can any of your friends or contacts provide aid or insight into this operation? Do we have any Memish, any contacts in this area? Not sure what is the
Not unless we want to go and sober up the archaeology student, which would have problems of its own.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody has.
I don't have anyone on my list.
Yeah. I don't see anybody on the ship necessarily either that, which is fine. Certainly we've had contacts for a number of these things, and we're kind of outside of your normal areas of operation in general. Are there any enemies or rivals interfering in this operation? Boy, they sure would if they knew about this, but you're a bit ahead of the curve on this one, so no. Are there any other elements that you want to consider? Maybe a lower tier target will give you plus D. Higher tier target will give you. I'm going to say that there is a minus D for the tier of this thing, because this is actually really it's nice, Dave. I like that. This is really pretty sophisticated as far as ruins go. This one's particularly possibly quite sophisticated, and also has like just some environmental challenges that make it really just kind of a challenge to get in here. So 1 dice.
This is not your standard burial mound.
No, it is not. 1 dice, another dice for bold or daring. Vulnerability will be nice, 3. And then back down to 1, 2, 3, and then 1 down because it's just super complicated potentially, which gets us down to rolling 2 fortune dice to see what our engagement situation is. And I'm going to put this map down to the side again while I get some clocks a rolling. Copy that one. Yeah, I'll do that. So, Margie.
Roll fortune?
Yeah, 2 dice total.
Everyone is agreeing I'm rolling, right?
Yeah, everyone. I am so agreeing that you're rolling.
Think we put on the input value notes?
Engagement roll, I guess. News. Get that over here on next to Mem. Infiltrating the Memish ruins. A fortune of a 4. Mixed result. You're in a risky position when the action starts. Okay. So, you've used, your intel of the area, basically, knowledge of sites, construction, which is definitely is. Managed to eliminate quite a few points of ingress as not non-starters, plus whatever killed that one guy. That one was interesting because, oh, my stars and gars, I just had a really good idea. That one was interesting because he was at probably the most obvious, and obvious being kind of, relative to everything else, but he was outside the most obvious hatch. Okay? And he had, it's weird underwater to say it, but he was just kind of standing there. Like he had sort of tethered himself to the outside of the hatch. But based on what you had, could see from around that hatch, it had opened. Like there's striations along the thing where the thing, having cycled open, had scraped a lot of the incrustations off. It had cycled. It had opened and closed again, and he was outside. No wounds, no obvious points of entry. I mean, his suit's waterlogged, but that's an age thing. I mean, he's probably been out here for you figure probably a year or two. So there's been some leakage and stuff. Water got in, but he's still pretty. It's not like a skeleton in a suit. With all due respect to Bill's original text, it's not a skeleton in a suit. It's to borrow from the Mummy, he's still juicy in there.
Ew.
Okay? And he very well preserved because the water down here is bloody cold. But he's a bloated corpse in a bag. The most disturbing thing about it is his tanks are empty. He just sat out here until he ran out of air, when the door next to him would open. Given that information, you decide to try a different entrance. It's like, we could go in here. Yeah, but let's not. Yeah, that's a good idea. So what you end up with is a point where
it's a nest. It's a that's a nest. What's the eye? Oh,
the
sensor
what?
one.
You broke up there.
Yeah, a ring.
It's a ring with a taser setting.
So you've got an area where you can get in, but this is more of the Hamanatra type of thing where you're basically prying a panel off that you figure is probably open and bare. It's been exposed to a lot more flow. There's a lot less incrustations. And you're kind of like, you're going to pop a hatch that shouldn't necessarily, want to pop. It's the Hamanatra equivalent of like pulling that, the stone out of basically the roof and laying yourself in on ropes. So this puts you in a risky position because you're not taking sort of, what would be the obvious but apparently kind of spooky option. I'm going to say that the risk in this case is sort of a physical one, that there's going to be some kind of potential, with getting this hatch open, there's some sort of potential there's a seal within there that might give that's potentially going to give way, and what would be a pretty easy hatch to open because it's like water on both sides kind of situation. An inner seal goes in once the door's open and creates kind of a sucking vortex kind of thing that is pulling you into, it's not unlike the reverse with having the same kind of dangerous decompression kind of thing in a spaceship. So the risk in this case, as you get into the thing, is really kind of a physical one of some kind of sucking vortex as open space inside starts to have water pour in and pulls you in with it, possibly through openings that aren't really the right size or shape for you to go in the direction that you're going in. Stuff like that. So that's where that thing sets you up was, we find ourselves outside the skin of this thing, trying to get in. And what's that look like, or who's possibly doing that kind of stuff? Like who's breaking the seal on this thing? Who's starting us off?
Well, I mean, if there's concerns about, being sucked in or blown out or something, Monster's probably the right person to actually move the door, braced.
Do the big physical thing, whatever the big physical thing happens to be. And I'm looking at your stuff. You can push yourself to one of the following. Perform a feat of physical force that verges on the superhuman.
You'll turn my head.
Your strength, it's a melee thing. So it basically comes down to sort of the unstoppable thing where you push yourself to one of the following, performing a feat of physical force that verges on the superhuman. So I think, but the problem with that is, of course, pushing yourself means taking on 2 stress when you're already kind of there.
I don't suppose my air of menace and danger would help in this case.
You're gonna just.
I intimidate the ruins.
The wall is unmoved, both spiritually speaking and physically, literally and symbolically.
That's fine. I'm willing to.
I feel like it's sort of a scrap
sure.
thing. I feel like it's sort of a scrap. I mean, you don't have to do it that way. It's just more of a.
It's just another opportunity for the doc to, have time to practice on patching people up.
So I'll lay it.
He was complaining about that.
I'll lay it out like this. If you're rolling with scrap, the risk is there. The potential for it to kind of go sideways is there because, again, you're rolling. You're not you're applying certainly your strength, but there's questions up in the air and stuff. But you're not necessarily pushing yourself. Okay. Or you push yourself, say, I am using unstoppable, and we tick a few things on the clock, and the risk is avoided because there simply isn't a roll to engage the risk. And we get into the next thing at the cost of, like, normally what happens in these kinds of situations is I'm getting stressed, so I get an extra die, and that's somewhat random. You have a thing that says, no, in this particular situation, when I spend a couple of stress, I just get the thing just happens. I do the big physical crazy thing, and it isn't about a bunch of dice rolls. I'm just going to spend the stress and get the win, so to speak. So that's sort of the trade-off. This isn't really even a devil's bargain. You've got 2 mechanical options.
I will go ahead and, what the hell, I'll take the stress.
All right.
And just do that thing.
I will treat that like a sort of like a 4 or 5 kind of result, just in terms of moving the clock. So we'll move a few ticks on the clock there and get us into the thing. So it's not strictly speaking, and basically Monster kind of waves people back a little bit from this thing and just let me do it. It's not strictly speaking perfectly equalized on both sides of this hatch. It is mostly. It's a question of breaking the seal enough to get a little bit, to get the water in, because this first room is going to be flooded. There isn't a way around that. Functionally, I mean logically,
Hmm.
unless there's some sort of magical force field kind of thing, it seems very likely. Um, so the question is, can you get the hatch open far enough to let the water in until the thing finally equalizes without getting then sucked up against this tiny little crack with ridiculous amounts of pressure being sucked through it? You do that, and it's one of those situations where you guys watching realize, okay, you tend to forget it, but Monster's effing terrifying. I mean, he is. You, it calls into question the times when you give him a hard time because you can see his muscles bulging through what is essentially a diver's suit, like the old school bulky, shapeless diver suit. You can see the muscles bulging in a thing that you shouldn't be able to see anything particular about the shape of the body within, as he's straining at this thing. And it's not without, certainly not without cost. Just listening to him kind of over the comms is enough for Sun to say he is going to need some Tylenol later. Kind of, possibly that, or possibly a neck brace or something. But the, with much effort and just really relentless pulling, the kind of pulling that can only be achieved normally through like a hydraulic jack. The thing is first the seal broken and then kept open long enough to eventually be, for the hatch to be drug open, and a hole into the place to be achieved.
I flash everyone a smile.
Through and of course it's the helmet that's inexplicably underlit in a way that, if you were actually dealing with that in real life, would be the most impossible thing to ever see out of wait, what am I thinking of? Every single pilot's helmet in Battlestar Galactica. Like
anytime they have space helmets or even
underlit.
underwater helmets.
Yeah, underlit inexplicably. But yeah, which makes his smile even more almost demonic, honestly. Okay. Who's first one through the breach, so to speak?
I can take point.
I was going to say, as Monster has a bit of a lie down. So
Monster's busy prying his fingers from the actual door.
By the way, I'm insisting on recording the entire thing.
Okay.
So it can have proper analysis later.
Okay. Give me just 1 second here. I'm getting a phone call, guys. I apologize.
Hey, who turned out the lights?
And we're back. All right. Okay, so K kind of going in first. This is
No, should I go in first, or are we thinking that it's traditional physical dangers, or do we think it's going to be?
Some of it is a matter of just
I think-
orientation and figuring out where the hell you are inside of the whole.
I think Armin
place.
needs to go in first. I mean, we want to focus on him, right?
If by focus,
my questions.
if by focus you mean stare and point in horror as he bleeds out in the cold, cold, icy depths, I guess. I mean, sure. I don't think Armin's necessarily 100% behind that, but
He's not behind it. He's in front of it.
In any case, there isn't a lot of worry, initially, or at least immediate risk kind of thing. This is more of a, I mean, it is technically an airlock type of setup, but you're definitely in the maintenance layers in the place. You talk about if you've done any reading of the Expanse books or something like that. There's sort of like there's the ship, and then there's this layer between the outer hull and the inner hull, where if you're an engineer, you find yourself occasionally, usually in a suit, because it isn't always pressurized, doing God knows what with like one tiny little leaking hydraulics copper tubing, bit of copper tubing that's leaking things out into space or whatever. This is like that. You're in that kind of space, except obviously turn to 11, it's a much bigger thing. So you're in an airlock, but it's meant, I mean, in a fancier type of situation, you'd have, the hatch wouldn't be manual for one thing. And you get the sense that possibly it wasn't part of the drag that Monster overcame as you look at the inside of the door and some of the mechanics that are up underneath the thing, is that it was originally a mechanized opening thing. So he wasn't just dragging against water pressure. He was dragging against like gears that had been put in a locked position. And somewhere in the back of your mind is the thought of like, I really need to give him a little bit less shit sometimes, because he's terrifying. The whole play, I mean, this room obviously still flooded. It looks like there are interfaces that would, once the door is shut, pump the water back out, clear this thing out. It's a question of, getting everybody back in and figuring out if this thing still has any kind of power. And if so, what do you do? How do you work this thing? All that kind of, that kind of stuff. So with folks in here and lights in kind of foggy, flecked water, with, little bits of just detritus and stuff floating around in it, like, what do you try? What's the interface? What do you expect the interface in this place to be like? Is it going to be, every computer face is half attunement, or is this just knowing the old DOS 3.0 operating system well enough to get a system booted back up so you can swipe a panel and say now open?
I think it would be the knowing knowing the ancient language, even if we can't speak it.
Okay. So is this a reach out with your senses kind of thing, or more techie?
It's more techie. I would say it's a what would it be? Study roll? Is that what it is?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I could certainly see a study roll just for figuring out what's supposed to be happening in here. Like what the next, like, if there's some kind of instructions printed on the wall in, you know, you haven't found yourself in a oceanic ruins before that's clearly, you know, strongly technological in nature. And it's kind of it's weirdly almost like being on the space station, except the materials are wrong. Like they feel even wrong through your boots. And this is true kind of, I want to say the people specifically I'd call it would be drifter, is, you know, the sense you come in here, it feels like, oh, this is like a space station, but kind of underwater. You come in on the side. This is, you know, maintenance airlock kind of thing. It's all familiar until you kind of just touch a wall or have a boot come down, and it just doesn't resonate even right. It doesn't have that, you know, magnetic boot against metal floor feeling. It has the feeling of two plates clicking together as you're putting them, you know, as you bring the edges together, and, you know, dinner plates kind of clicking together. It's just it's the wrong feel. Whether it's creepy or not, or just whatever. It's just you know, off balancing, we'll say. Okay, so a study roll works for me. Is this the kind of thing that you would? I can see reasons why the doctor would have knowledge of. This is the kind of thing where any tech that you can get your hands on that's tech has probably worked its way into the technology in the same way that, you know, the faster than light travel has. If they find any kind of tech, and if people can make sense of it, they try to leverage it. And that means copying a lot of things. Armin would find that current modern computer systems have echoes of, you know, if you can find a functional technological device of the and get to the point where you're dealing with commands, they feel somewhat similar, partly because the people smarter than you about computers and figure this kind of stuff up have copied what they could, just because the designs are so elegant, kind of a deal. And this is true, you know, in the same way that you've got the more ancient, long-running academic pursuits such as medicine, basing themselves on Latin precepts, so on and so forth. You've got the same kind of thing, kind of with the kind of thing. So it's like, you know, you can easily get some help from Sun going, you know, can you make heads or tails of this stuff up here on the wall? I can make out this, and this, but I'm not sure what this thing over here is supposed to be. That kind of stuff. So, thoughts? I mean, it's certainly a study roll. Sun, you want a piece of this action?
I can definitely help out.
Okay. My thought might be, oh, I got to look at this again. The group action? Possibly not everybody would jump in on this. I don't know if everybody has to. How does that work? Does everybody have to jump in on a?
No, not everybody has to.
Not everybody has to. It can just be kind of a thing. So to help, just to straight up help, you can get Kay another dice by just spending a stress and, you know, sort of giving another dice. Leading a group action, each PC who is involved makes an action roll using the same action, and the team counts the single best result as the overall effort of everyone who rolled. However, the character leading the group takes 1 stress for each PC that gets a 1 to 3 on their best result. So you know, I picture Gandalf stuck outside of the doors into Moria, you know, racking his brain on things and conferring with Gimli, who knows a bit, you know, who knows like lots of dwarvish passphrases, and Legolas, who knows a bunch of Elvish, and trying to get enough dice together to, you know, kind of figure out what the command words would
I
be.
just want the halfling saying, "What's the Elvish word for?"
What's the Elvish word for friend? So You've got study. The doc's got study. Is there anybody else who would have 2 cents to kick in on this thing, or are you kind of the guys? Are you two the resident brainiacs? I never look to see what anybody else's study is. Armin's got a pip in it. Bay we already established. Sun has some study. I am shocked, I tell you, to discover that Monster does not. I'm shook. So we have three people here who can argue about what maybe the best possible thing would be. Where and the way I'm picturing it is, we've got the archaeological knowledge. Sun, it's like, well, that's definitely the same base, verb as. And I'm not going to come up with any good examples of what it's like to conjugate Latin. I'm just not. It's let Dave do that. And then Armin going, listen, it's
Ask James in another 12 months.
And then and then there's Armin going, listen, it's an airlock. It's going to work like airlocks work because physics say it's got to work a certain way. So whatever is printed right here are the instructions for pumping the water out because this is where the water would pump out, kind of applying current modern logic to, the kind of, the whole scenario, that kind of thing. Thoughts? Does that sound about right? Are you guys all ready to give Margie some stress? Oh, I love that movie. Really a lot more than I should, but I love that movie. In space, everyone can see your face. I love it. And of course, skeleton in a spacesuit. Thank you so much, James, for the skeleton in a spacesuit. So, thoughts? Yes? Do you want to do the group action thing?
Sure.
Okay. So,
What are the parameters?
I think we're still in risky because there's some stuff going on inside of the base here where, I say base, inside of the structure that are, well, the risk is that we're really not, that the structure itself has been compromised. So the potential for flooding either pre-existing or accidentally happening as we're, opening hatches that maybe aren't working necessarily correctly and fail safes that are failing to be safe, things like that. Are going to complicate things. Essentially, if the risk here is that we end up with a second clock of we're trying to infiltrate this, get into this thing and figure out what the heck it is, and the other one being dealing with the fact that the water isn't just on the outside. So we end up with the sort of a danger, a clock that fills up with like flooding danger as we proceed. A Forbidden Island scenario, if you like.
There you go.
There you go.
All right.
It's like
sandbag.
Can you get the stuff out before the island sinks? Love that game. Man, I like that game more than I should. Anyway, so that's sort of the risk out there.
People do.
Going back over to K, you've got study. You potentially might pick up a couple of stress. Worst case scenario, you'd pick up what would it be? I guess 3 stress. Now, here's a fun
thing. Everybody not me.
Yeah, everybody not you. So you pick up a couple stress from that. So theoretically, you could push yourself for another dice. I don't have an easy devil's bargain. We do get gambits. The gambits are out there. There's 3 as per any other sort of mission. So you could spend a gambit on that if you're so inclined. And while I'm having this conversation, I'm going to just lay this out here for both Sun and Armin. You can push yourself. I don't easily have a devil's bargain. And you can, choose to spend a gambit or just roll the dice that roll the dice you've got. Obviously, if you're just rolling the one, it's a little bit dodgier about what your result might be, but it's really kind of up to you guys. It depends on how you look at it. You're rolling 3 dice as it stands. You're just rolling them all kind of individually. How much more dice would you like to be rolling? I'll ask that question first of Kay.
I'm probably going to do something to bump it at least 1.
Okay.
But I do have a question, just going back to something you said.
Mm-hmm.
So is this is a new thing? So when you were putting in our chits,
Mm-hmm.
put in the extra one for me?
The crew starts with an additional gambit when the pool resets? Is that what you're talking about? I'm not hearing you if you're saying something.
I am saying yes.
Okay, yeah, you should have 3 because the team normally starts with 2,
Okay.
and you get an additional one, which I'll get over here on the ship and actually put in the gambits. Yeah, the gambits are currently at 3. So yeah, you've got 3 gambits to work with. We're at risky, which is that one of the situations that'll put the gambits. Well, no, with you, if you spend a gambit. Yeah, with you, if you spend a gambit, oh, what is your little thing with that?
Can generate gambits on a desperate roll, even if I've spent a gambit on it. In other words, if I would earn a gambit, or
right,
if I would earn a gambit,
the normal generation
right.
of gambits is on a risky roll where you get a crit. Am I right? Did I just say that right? Did I actually get a rule correct on the first try? Maybe.
I know you get them when it's a crit. I don't remember.
It's a crit on a risky roll, and with you, a crit on a desperate roll. That it doesn't come up in this case, which is fine because you're risky right now anyway. So you could spend a gambit, and if you guys manage to pull a crit out of the whole thing, I mean, then the trick is the crit has to sort of be on a particular person, which means to get a crit, you've got to at least be rolling 2 dice. So
what I'm looking at is actually just taking a stress and rolling an extra die.
Okay, it would be 2 stress to get the extra die. Assists from somebody else is they take 1 stress to give you an extra die. If you want to give yourself your own, so it's 2 stress for that, and that gives you the 2 die. Okay, Son, what do you think? How stressful are you how stressful is this for you, or whatever? Or are you just going to roll the 1 dice and let it stand?
I can.
I'm okay with the 1 dice.
Yeah.
Just so
you
know.
You don't need to push. I'm just asking if you want to. Really.
Well, I finally made it so that my 1 move can do something.
You may doctor something during your job to allow them to ignore effects of harm penalty?
No. I finally got my.
You can push yourself to roll your doctor rating. You can push yourself to roll your doctor rating while performing a different action. That's actually really good because we're talking about like how figuring out the language based on the study that you've done for medical stuff and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's a push that actually gets you 2 dice instead of 1, which is fabulous.
Yeah, well, 3.
Yeah, well, two additional dice as opposed to just the 1 that a push would do. Oh, that's great. It's even better when you don't have the skill at all.
Yes.
That's scary. Well, yeah. I mean, if that sounds really good to me. I mean, that's a really good. I mean, you're picking up 2 stress, but by all means, roll 3. And Armin, what do you say? What do you think?
I'm just letting the 1 dice.
I'm just gonna stand for 1. I like that. All right. So everybody just needs to roll. It is a risky. It is standard. Kay's rolling 2. Son's rolling 3. Armin's rolling.
Yeah.
There's one's. Oh, the doctor dice. The doctor dice just Well, we got a 4 at least. We know we're through the thing somehow. Let's see what Kay's got with her too. Oh, yay. Thank God for those doctor dice.
I studied more in medical school than you guys
Well,
did.
and your what you're finding is a lot of like it's the section of wall that's painted in, the colors have faded, but it's painted, the instructions printed are in a different color, and that immediately says in the event of emergency kind of things to you. And there's a kind of a rectangular, weird kind of rectangular shape suggested on the wall that gets you to a panel where there's a bunch of crap that's like long since gone to just mush, but there's also like valves and stuff like there, and like, okay, so this is an emergency area, so right around here is where they're going to have you like grabbing like emergency air masks and pressure masks, and there's probably going to be a manual pump kind of thing, and yeah, probably right about it. And so there's like a, because there's a lot of stuff on the walls. It's like, I don't know if I want to mess with this because this might be the thing that, kills us all. And you're like, no, this is probably grab the handle. It's kind of the gripping handle. It's like in the wall and, clearly meant to be rotated, but we don't know what it does, but we'll turn it and we'll pull, and that pulls out this thing from the wall that is apparently some kind of like manual pumping thing for just like, we can't get the power going in here, but if you have to, you can get the water out. It's just not going to be pretty, kind of a deal.
It's when you're blowing up your mattress, by hand versus
getting the electric motor to do it, and not helped by the fact that the scale of the room is weird, and the handles aren't at a good height to really have like solid leverage anywhere very easily, even more so as the water level starts to lower. It's slightly better for Monster because he's bigger, but even so, it's kind of like trying to saw something when the thing you're trying to saw is kind of up at your forehead height, and you're trying to get leverage, and like you've got to be up above it kind of, so you're really not, getting to use your proper leverage. There's a couple of these around the room, so you can use them. And as far as the doctor's thing goes and Kay's thing goes, a lot of the stress is simply the physical effort of this. Everybody's chipping in. I'm going to say maybe Armin doesn't kick in possibly as much as everybody else, but maybe some of where the doctor's stress where Kay's stress comes from. But yeah, it's just a slog. It's not like it's not a great, noble thing. We just have to get the water out of here, and here's where the pumps are. So start, put your backs into it. But having done that, so I think, Kay, you end up taking one additional stress, which isn't too bad, all things considered. And then it's a couple, one more panel that opens up, and then it's basically a crank to get into the next area. And there's a point at which I'm gonna lay this on Armin. It's basically like, listen, we've got enough water open. We can open up the door. If some water pours out into the next floor, big deal, right? I mean, we're not cleaning the carpets later. It's fine, right? The problem is that 4. And kind of the risk that we laid out for this thing. So you guys get the water level down to like, call it shoulder chest height. Okay. You can crank open the door. The water will pour out. We can walk out into the rest of the area. Good.
Yes, but what are we damaging in the process?
Well, you're still pretty.
But who knows what we might destroy?
This belongs in a museum.
No, yeah.
Well, you're still out in. This is not going to be where valuable stuff is necessary. I mean, artifact type of stuff, because you're still in maintenance stuff.
It's,
You
it's,
know,
a
I
real
have-
it's a real shame they left all of those spun sugar statuary of their deities there right inside the airlock door
In the maintenance bay.
In the maintenance bay
you know,
as the water pours in.
But and I absolutely agree that while Kay would make that protest, I also know from many hours of this weekend, one of our weekend activities, flooding base. We're gonna take that guy and save those changes. We're just gonna put a little flooding base in here too. Part of me wants to randomize this, like, let's just randomly see how flooded this base is. We went out to the reservoir this week and we went paddleboarding. One of the paddleboards that we have is it's inflatable as opposed to being like a hard plastic one, or not plastic, but fiberglass. So you inflate it. You inflate it to 15 pounds per square inch, which if you pump up bike tires does not seem like much. But when you are talking about something 4 or 5 inches deep that is 12 feet long, is a lot of pumping. And I'm in pretty good shape, but I don't like pumping that thing up. I don't. It is one of my least favorite things. A couple years ago, no, last Father's Day, my wife got me a motorized thing that you hook up to your car battery that is an air compressor that then theoretically can be used to pump up that thing. And I say theoretically because it doesn't actually have a compatible valve for plugging into the thing, and they're bloody hard to find. So I ended up, again, hand pumping it up to the required rigidity so that it doesn't just collapse under my kids' feet when they're out in the water. I would suggest, based on my experience, that if in your nobler moments, I'm going to say before the pumping begins, Kay would feel very strongly we must try to protect the rest of the ship as much as possible with opening the door. We don't want water to get in here and actually damage things. And I'm going to suggest that 30 minutes later, trapped inside of a suit, having been pumping, where maybe not everybody is taking the same turns as everybody else, you're a lot more okay opening up that door and letting a little bit more water out into the hallway if it means you get to stop pumping now. Because seriously, F this activity. Anyway. In any case, it becomes a bit of a moot point because as you're cranking the door open, the water does not pour out, it pours in. And you are left with the sinking realization that the hallway outside is just as full of water as the one inside here. Which, bonus, to a certain extent, I guess, bonus, it means you can just crank the door open and continue. Is the issue of maybe you'll get an area that's powered and you'll be able to actually get a proper pump out of this thing. Who knows? You've seen weirder things. It seems crazy to even think that any of this place after this long would still be functional, especially considering it's underwater. But given what you've seen they don't follow the rules of decay that you would find in typical mechanics or circuitry, not least because they don't seem to have either most of the time. The fact that some of this stuff is so mechanical is honestly a little bit weird. It indicates a certain kind of engineering prioritization that implies the expectation. This is unusual, and I say this. It has the kind of engineering evident that implies an expectation of failure in the systems, which is not something you've seen in technology before. The idea that there's multiple redundancies some of which are meant to be done when all systems have failed and can simply be, we need to make sure that even if everything has failed, this thing can still be operated via a hand crank, is just not the stuff that you've seen in designs before.
So this would be a little more like a military type of thing where they build it for extreme redundancy and survivability in combat.
That is exactly
over-engineered.
Yeah, that is exact, and that and if I want to surface this as something that's really in character. So if Kay's having this is really weird. Like there's this, you just don't see this in ruins with like like if something either works or it is too old to work. They don't have stuff of like, oh well, in case the door isn't powered anymore, here's a hand crank. That's not done. And yeah, Drifter comes up with, oh, that's military spaceship design right there. I mean, if the engineering core can't keep the thing running, then the grunt that can turn a crank can keep it going, kind of a deal. And monster, multiple redundancies, which is an interesting take on what it says about this whole place, really. Anyway, so thought-provoking as the door is cranked the rest of the way open and you're able to float into the next area and figuring out where to go next.
From that last set of rules, I take 1 stress from.
You take 1 stress from Armin's roll, and then you had taken 2 from just pushing yourself.
I took the 2 already. Yeah.
So you just take 1 from Armin's roll.
Okay, just
That's
confirming.
Correct. Yep. So kind of out into a. I don't want to call it a hallway because it isn't really that. It is the sense of there's some real strong spaceship kind of vibes, recognizable design stuff here Drifter, just because this is like, oh, this is between outer hull, inner hull kind of space. So there aren't like, it's all open both above and below you. Okay, there aren't.
So is it sort of like they took a spaceship and buried it in the bottom of the ocean, or is it like they took the concepts of building a spaceship to build something that was going to be under the water?
Probably more the concepts, because from just a simple engineering point of view, everyone likes to have like that spaceship that can fly down to the surface of the planet and then just go underwater because, well, it can survive in vacuum, so go water. Keeping stuff out is a very different engineering challenge than keeping air in. So it's unlikely that it's like a spaceship that came down, but yeah, the idea that it's applying like spaceship engineering precepts, that certainly seems to follow. The weird thing about it is that there isn't really like, you're not stepping out into a corridor, you're stepping out into a void space. It's not entirely empty. There's crossing beams and that sort of thing, and it's fine because it's full of water. So getting around, you got to wonder if the water wasn't here, which theoretically, clearly it wasn't originally supposed to be here, but if the water wasn't here, how the hell would you even get around? How would anybody get around? There aren't a lot of great images of what the precursors, would have looked like, but this is a interesting take on it. Like, did they just float around in here? Did they climb? But yeah, it's just open, kind of left, right, up, down, with probably about, I want to say 10 feet, just a little bit under 10 feet. Monster can actually, if he kind of be right in the middle of the space and stretch his arms way out, because his are longer, can probably just barely brush like the inner and outer wall of the thing in terms of the space available. And that varies somewhat, the distance, based on what's, mounted on the walls and that kind of thing. It's not curved necessarily. Well, there's some curve to it just because of the shape of the building and stuff. It's not like you're it's mostly a straight kind of a thing. So it's just a question of like, and there's no hatch immediately opposite. So it's just a question of, going hunting and figuring out where to go from here. What do you think? What do you do? And I'm gonna while you guys figure out next move, I had somebody come in here and saying I have a problem and I need to address that problem because I'm the dad and you got to fix problems. I'll be right back.
James, what do you want to do?
I don't care. This. I mean, I don't know.
I say we put Monster on a stick, like a 10-foot pole, and just sort of use him to prod at the ground.
Like it.
Aw,
Monster on a stick.
on a stick.
Please.
Poor monster.
Hmm. I was gonna say, instead of studying the doors to figure out how to close them or pump the water out, you should have tried to attune yourself to the base.
Because that works so well.
You know?
No, you just want to drum up business for the doctor.
You're right, I bribed him.
Although, actually, on consideration, it does make me think that maybe doing something of an attuning fashion might be a way of kind of trying to guide us to stuff that's cool.
Thinking sort of like what we did to identify this potential location. Looking for the resonance.
I'm going to get out of here rolling scrap. It's going to be great.
I mean, take it as a compliment that my daughter's like critically important thing that she needed me to resolve was she couldn't hear the game. So so that was her big thing. Still can't, but reboot it. That'll probably fix it. All right. So what's the move here? What's the plan? Margie, you're miking up. There's a rush of air. No. Thoughts? Exploring? Everybody split up?
We'll get more
I'll
damage that way.
Yeah, I'll go look out in the old graveyard out back.
There is okay. Well, I've given you. I feel like I've failed to give you proper direction. So I will say this: there are areas in this space where you see lights. So there is some power, or possibly very, very, very patient anglerfish. Super patient. But there are lights, powered panels, even in this water and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Did you incidentally bring the key, the Aleph key? Is that sitting in somebody's like fanny pack?
We had to.
Well, you brought it as far as the thing. Well, obviously you're not going to leave it with.
Well, we're not going to leave it alone in the ship with
Joe,
Coral now.
Yeah, Joe Schmuck, Joe Coral. Yeah. Okay.
So sure.
Yeah. I just ran.
Monster has the key.
That's not relevant of it. That's not relevant necessarily to anything. I just suddenly thought like, where the hell's the key? Anyway. All right.
Well, I did raise the suggestion that doing some sort of weird attunement tuning fork kind of a thing might give us a direction, but I don't know that that's a good idea, but it's the only one that I've heard so far.
Yeah. I mean, when in doubt, cast augury. Classic level 3 D&D maneuver. Everyone's at level 3. Don't know what to do. Stuck at a door. Can't get the door open. Cast augury. See what happens. So there's investigations you can do there in terms of like trying to figure out where the power is coming from. The place is, taking that information in a slightly different direction. The place is not without power. It therefore may respond to the way, to attunement, which was maybe an open question mark kind of thing. So it may be a question of just waking the place up and having it get back to work of, taking care of things.
Well, how about this? We came in at an outer edge of this structure,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
We have a good sense of more or less how this structure overall is oriented.
Yeah.
So Drifter's just going to head towards where the center seems to be.
I mean, that would be where you guys are, basically like left a bit, probably less than 100 meters, and then see if you can find a hatch. You're at about the right height to put you at the center of the mast, top to bottom. You just need to get in further.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's go this way, guys.
Yeah. You want to head, and you can't help but thinking of it as you want to head fore. You want to head, fore as opposed to aft, and in your head you've oriented this thing to you're on the port side and you need to head towards the front of the ship. Like,
okay, yeah, where control would be.
Yeah. And if it's a battleship, you're talking about a CNC kind of situation where it's not like pretty and in front. It's that hard to crack
Most
core.
protected area.
Yeah, it's like right in the core of the ship.
Last place to get damaged. Yeah.
Yeah, right in the core of the place. So following that logic, then yeah, you just need to get inside and head dead center for the middle of the thing. Yeah, in that case, let's have I'm going to ask for a rig roll and just see if we can, kind of, figure out the technology of the place and, apply that engineering logic to the layout and, finding a way further in.
And I'll push for answer die.
Okay. Any help? Anybody want to assist on that, or letting him stand for that? Doc, you might have you also rig, but I don't know if you're inclined to jump in on that. I'm not going to waste a bunch of time trying to cause and dice off of everybody, but I do remember that you've got rig, so you might
Yeah, I can jump in to help.
Okay, yeah, and I will just point out, guys, that we did spend nearly an hour trying to get through this door. So
Oh God, we haven't gotten any better than we would on the first. We didn't do any better than we did on the very first session. That's terrible. Um, this one's a. I was expecting it to take more than one session to get through this whole thing anyway, but I didn't want to have taken an entire session on a door. So let's not do that this time. So I have a rig, and if you're just gonna help. Oh, you're getting kind of close. Well, you can throw in a dice. It will cost you a stress, and you're pretty close to stressed. So,
Yeah, I'd rather not.
okay, in that case, let's just leave it, and we'll have Drifter just throw its 3 dice and be done.
I got too stressed out by memories of med school.
Yeah.
there we go.
Oh, look at that
Oh,
6 though.
no.
You don't need to roll. You don't need to. There's no need for you to roll the dice because we're not doing the helping
There's
thing.
no roll.
Yeah, there's no roll. The roll did not happen. In any case, we
Ah.
got a 6. Okay. So we're not moving the flooding base thing. We are moving this thing a little bit. That's not what I want. Thinking about what this is going to look. Is it still not working? Can you put the headphones back on? Sorry. I don't know what's going on. I'll have to fiddle with it later, but I can't really fiddle with it right now. I'm sorry. She just got back from swim practice because world is crazy. Anyway. Okay. So now you're still consulting with the folks who have like more expertise with the tech, but thinking of this like a military craft, you know there's going to be redundancies, you know there's going to be, airlocks inside airlocks, interior airlocks, all that kind of stuff. And you're able to find, I mean, there's a couple of hatches that you pass right by because they're not lit. You find one that is. It doesn't look particularly promising because it's smaller, but it does still show that it's got power. Also, and initially this looks weird. It's especially from like a spacer's point of view, it looks weird because it's the hatch opens like it's two plates coming together. It's a circular kind of a thing. I shouldn't say it looks weird from a spacer point of view. It looks like a space airlock. It opens both directions and it's going to let water into the next space, but it's a very small cramped space and it's definitely uh, uh, sealed at the other end. So what you have in here
Designed
is
to be evacuated.
yeah, you've got another, this is another like, okay, well, the outer seal is broken, the inner hull area is flooded. Here's another way for us to get in and then compression out this space and move into the next space. So you're able to, and the cycle, the biggest question, honestly, the biggest problem that time consuming was just figure out what's the button sequence for opening the damn thing. And what you ultimately sort of default to is, well, in case of catastrophic failure, it's going to default to whatever the default. It's not like a number pad, obviously, but it's like a circular kind of thing with like one central contact, call it membrane, and the sort of a spiraling knotless kind of spiral of contact pads out from that. And you're kind of like, it's either going to be push every single one of them and you just like push the central membrane like 5 times in a row and the thing cycles. Because basically this is not it, but for all intents and purposes, in catastrophic failure, the code to open the thing just reset to 5 zeros, basically. That's the equivalent.
Some VCR is flashing 12.
Exactly. So it's just beat, beat, beat. It's like, I don't know, this might work, and if it doesn't, I'm just going to do, hey, look, it does. And you got to kind of grab a handle, keep the water, because the water goes, but there isn't that much space inside, so you don't get a long rush of water. Get into this thing, punch the same code on the other side, and then it's a simple matter of a very dimly lit panel where, for those of you who have played Forbidden Island, you know, the thing that shows the current water level, there's a slider that's all the way up on this sort of virtual representation kind of thing, and you push it down to the bottom, and the thing starts not exactly humming, because that implies motors, that really doesn't imply, but basically a pressure increases in the space that you're in. You can feel it on your bodies, if not the helmet area. And the water is basically, and this is weird, pushed back out of the space from the far door over to the door that you just came through. Like, literally, there is a line top to bottom in the air that expands in and pushes the water back. And so at the halfway point, half of this chamber that you're in is in air, and the other half is in water. And
That's
it
in
just,
the abyss.
yeah, but that kind of, it just pushes the water back out, and you don't even see really where it goes. It just goes out until this room is sealed. It's not perfect. There's still a lot of worrisome dripping of at the level that you would see of like a garden hose, where it's like the sprayer on the end is closed, but there's still quite a lot of water running, dripping off the end, off of the other end that's up to the spigot. It's not a perfect seal, not anymore. And you're not entirely sure how long this thing would hold, but it doesn't matter at this point, because you can get out through the door and close the door and you're fine. So you cycle the door and step out into essentially the inside of the ship, where it appears to be dry and clear of the water. The clock hasn't gone away, but you certainly advanced it.
Guys, I think the military ship is a ship and it sank.
It's certainly, I mean, you think about, I mean, it could be a ship. You've seen weirder designs based on the stuff that they occasionally find. You've never seen designs like this, but you've certainly seen very, very, well, I shouldn't say that. What has been found of space technology? Obviously, the hyper jump technology and stuff like that is recovered from ships, but that stuff is so, like, the original craft are so ridiculously locked down by governmental corporations, things like that, that, you know, only real, like, schematic sketches and stuff like that, the original designs. You haven't really seen stuff like this, which would either imply one of two things. Nobody's found grade military, you know, era military ships, or they've been found and they have not, they've been kept so quiet that not even sketches or really even rumors have gotten out about the things.
They've been Area 52'd.
Yeah, but they're really, weirdly, there aren't even really rumors about this kind of stuff. But yeah, thinking back to the sonar, it could definitely be the placement's a bit precarious, certainly. Okay, so from here, probably kind of head this way. And I think as you're proceeding, kind of like you kind of moved, call it, to this area here, and you sort of need to move the freehand draw kind of up into this sort of central area. So it's a matter of kind of moving a little bit more forward and centrally, but it's got that kind of simple design logic that tends to lend itself to that tends to find itself in military craft. This is, the finest minds have engineered, the finest minds working for the lowest bidders have it. This is probably not true for technology, but come right down to it, you're talking about a ship that was designed to be used by people who are being shot at currently. So things need to be kept simple and operating when under a great deal of stress. So the flow of the place tends to be pretty straightforward and logical, even for an alien mind, an unknowable alien mind kind of thing.
Okay, Kay, I got a question.
Mm-hmm.
Who would be shooting at the
He's a good question.
Other
The
other
Other?
other. It's a really good question. I mean, one of the great questions of any race that came before is where are they now, right? Where are those other where did they go? What happened to them? Did they just leave? Did they arise to a higher plane? Did something wipe them out? And if so, where are they now? Mutually assured mutually assured destruction. If so, why is the planet still here? Based on what these guys could do. There's, certainly raise some questions on what would be going on here. So, while that question comes up, as that question is coming up, in case we're pondering, because I mean, do you have a stock answer, Kay? Is it what's the generally is there an official academic take on this that is the first thing that pops into mind, or is it a big nobody knows, or?
I think the current hypothesis, based on the gate technology and the fact that some gates are effectively turned off, is that they decided to leave the neighborhood and
lock the door behind them.
Kind of, they maybe they're waiting for people to get to the point where they can knock on the door appropriately. But the idea is that they were explorers and they have gone elsewhere.
Or were they? Yeah. The idea though is like, what would they be fighting? What could be fighting them? Did they leave because they were explorers? It raises some questions. Did they leave because they were explorers? Did they leave because they were running away? And if so, where's that?
But we haven't seen any indication of destruction from a large scale physical sense. Is decay, not destruction.
Yeah, the ruins, at least any ruins that you've ever heard about, are largely, it's a question of abandonment, not like, and here's, there's no Hiroshima, Nagasaki.
Hiroshima.
Hiroshima. What did I say? Oh, I emphasized the wrong syllable.
You said it fine. I said Hiroshima.
Oh my God.
Oh gosh.
Oh my God. Yeah, there's no Hiroshima. Oh, that's so bad. Seriously, that's terrible. There's no. I mean, for that matter, there's no Pompeii. Certainly not with indication of military origin.
But there's also no indication of other civilizations. So if they were finding somebody other than other you would expect to see traces of that civilization, and we don't.
So you guys are kind of walking along the hallway, and this is going on, and there's as you're going, you're getting like the first thought is like it's almost a tinnitus kind of ringing. Do safety pressure. Are you guys still just out of safety's sake keeping the helmets on as you're walking along here, or did you?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So weird feedback on the comms or whatever, but it keeps building. Monster, you're the first one that notices that it's for obvious reasons that the sound is uh, uh, happening at the same time as like the vibration of on you of the key that you're carrying. Like there's whether it's on, is it like in a backpack? Is it shoved inside of your shirt? Is it on a fanny pack? Like where have you got this thing?
It's in a pack slung around my shoulders.
Okay, so you're feeling it like through that, and at the same time as you're like, oh well, this thing is vibrating and causing this ringing thing. Half of you like the immediate question is, am I feeling it or am I getting the sense of a vibration that's not really a vibration? Am I feeling it or am I feeling it? Like, is there actually vibration or am I just getting the psychic impression of vibration? Which is not the kind of existential question that Monster tends to ask himself, but in this event is, playing at the back of your mind as this is happening. So what do you do? What do you do? Because it is growing. There is some sort of building, and the ship itself. I say ship. Whether it's a ship or not, the structure itself seems to not necessarily be resonating with that ring, but it is also activating, waking up somewhat. Quickly though, like in a building crescendo kind of a deal.
Is something waking up? The ship.
Are you trying to get at the key while you're talking to this, or are you just?
Yeah, I'm unslinging it from around my shoulder. I'm not gonna take it out of the bag yet.
Yeah.
But I want to. I'm waiting for it to leap up and fly and tear itself out of the bag and go flying down the corridor or something. And
it doesn't seem to be doing that. It's not even really. You've seen reactions from this thing that are definitely more like affecting the environment, and this is much more like it's reacting to the environment itself. Like it's like almost like it's a warning beep. Psychic car alarm kind of a deal. Which is worrisome on so many levels.
There's just a computer voice talking. It's counting. Yeah.
That can't be right. It's going in the wrong order. It's going in reverse. Why would it be counting down? Oh God.
Get out.
So, Armin, where is your focus while this is sort of, because there is, I mean, the sort of the sound in your ears, or at least on the comms, this like, sort of undulating, I guess is the best phrase for it. It's kind of a up and down. It's building up in the mic. Monster's saying something about how the key's doing something, waking up something, or the ship, this place is waking up or something. Is your focus on them? Are you looking around? Where are you? Where's your focus at this point?
Sure that our way out isn't going to close on us.
So you're kind of towards the back and looking back the other way, okay?
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you, please, to make an attune roll. Oh, I picked the wrong.
Okay.
And I have to I think it's, if you can see Armin's character sheet, literally it's like good points in everything under resolve except attune, which is nothing.
Business risky.
This is. This is risky limited. Yeah, it's a risky thing, and what you could probably glean from this is somewhat limited, just based on circumstances and what's kind of coming up.
Okay,
Okay. Okay.
I got it too.
You got it too. Okay. All right. In that case, probably I'm going to say, so what you see is a figure. And again, scale is wrong. This thing is probably, oh, you know what? I actually maybe think I kind of have, this is going to be a very rough impression. Very, very rough impression. But I'm going to pull something up here that I can probably use to give you a basic idea. But there's something coming down the hallway that sort of comes into focus. You start to get the sense of something approaching from behind, coming at you guys. And big. And it's getting more, it comes into focus as it's approaching. It never quite gets there. It's never more than probably like a very well outlined silhouette, like a shadow with a little bit of shape into it. It's never fully in focus. It's never fully visible, but it's definitely as it gets closer or intensifies. It's either a matter of distance or just, this is not right, but it's close. So I'm going to throw this up here as kind of the image that you get this thing, and it's coming. It's rushing, hurrying. I'm going to say hurrying down the corridor straight at you. Oh, whoop, wrong button for that. There we go. And again, this is not right, but it's closer, or close enough. And
Monster.
coming really kind of straight at you, and through and really just right, and before you can flinch or you try to get out of the way or anything like that, kind of passes right through you. And what you get at that moment is this shattering horror. Not, and this is not like Margie's touched the mind of a great space leviathan. Okay, it's not that its mind is so terribly foreign from yours. That's not the problem. The fact that it isn't is the problem, because what it is going through as it intersects with your space in the hallway is, it is being subjected to horror. And it's similar enough that you are also feeling that same thing. It's not so alien that you can't just immediately understand it. Or you know, or feel, if not exactly the same thing, then close to the same thing. It is every existential realization of meaninglessness and rack and ruin and despair packed into a gunshot that this thing is being subjected to, like in the moment of a gunshot firing. And you feel it die from this while it's passing through you. You feel it like just literally physically be unable to continue the life functions because of what it's just been subjected to as it's passing through. So the And the other thing, and I'll give you this as a bit of information, is this isn't some sort of existential thing. This was not some crazy that just decided to expire out of sheer terror. Something, you just experienced something getting shot. Okay? You experienced whatever this thing was, the ghost of something or whatever, the after image of this thing being killed by a weapon that horrifies things to death. And further, it wasn't a hand weapon. It was like a big thing that it just happened to get caught in the broadside that horrifies things to death. And you get to experience it over the, luckily, through the, what do I want to say? The insulation of a couple thousand, possibly million years, distance, time, and not actually being the same species. So it's
Might explain the diver out front.
So it's only, yeah, I want to not be here, so I will run outside and strap myself to the outside of the ship because it's better than being inside there. At least this way, I'm only dying of lack of oxygen, as opposed to whatever. Or it just drove me straight out crazy. So this is barring resistance rolls, a like a level 3 wound of psychic nature. Would you like to resist that?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So it's, I don't know how to explain it except for, shot by some existential horror cannon. But can we downgrade that? The resistance, if I remember right, resistance automatically happens, right? That downgrades it. And you roll. We haven't had a resistance up to this point. Well,
we've had a few.
We've had a few, but not for a while. But I'm trying to remember how it all shakes out. Where's the resistance? I feel like there's a button there for that.
Do resolve, prowess, or insight?
I would like you to do a resolve resist roll because it is definitely part of that. Which is, yay for you. The attune isn't strong, but everything else is there. You have a strong mind.
All right, I resolve.
Look at that. Okay. So we don't take stress from this, from the resistance, and we'll put it down to. Actually, I'm not going to start with the level 3 harm because this could actually be worse in other circumstances. So I'm going to start with the level 2, and this will move you down to a level 1. So we'll call it After Images of Horror. Sure, why not that?
How about I saw a ghost?
Well, I mean, it's not the ghost that's the creepy. I mean, it could theoretically be the creepy part, but it's that moment. So I feel like Armin has a lot of good mental compartmentalization ability. I think that's fair. Wouldn't you say that Armin can compartmentalize well? How do you lock this thing away? Or set it aside, or how do you pigeonhole this away from the part where it does like really like serious harm to your personal self? It's a shock, definitely a shock. It's it's like being in a car accident unexpectedly, but it's not so very much worse than that based on what you do. So what's your reaction? Is it anger, sarcasm, just discarding it, dismissing it as denying that it was as bad as it really was and just trying to believe your lie? What do you think?
Not certain.
Not certain. All right. We'll let it ride for now. I'm not worried. I'm just thinking about it kind of out loud, trying to see where what that feels like. Now, I mean, really anybody could have noticed this, so it's more likely to be Monster. You certainly got the distraction of dealing with the thing. It is gone as it intersects with Armin, so it doesn't like pass through the rest of you. But that sense of a presence or a clarifying of presence in the space could happen. Kay could certainly have picked up on that. I don't know. I don't remember if Sun and Drifter have any attune rolls. In any case, Drifter's got kind of Sun, you're more likely to catch the body language of Armin as he sort of like has this happen to him. In any case, Drifter, you have other information, other data coming in that is really more distracting to you, or you're more prevalent. So you've got the key humming, things, something's happening sort of in the structure itself. The key is resonating. But you also feel like a thrum through the floor. And it's kind of a rhythmic thing, like kind of a thing. And it, as soon as that happens, it's like, call it 2 or 3 pulses and a pause and then another longer one. That's it's less of a thrum and more of just like a weird kind of feel it in your teeth kind of a whine in the air, and then everything just immediately stops. Like, so the reaction to the ship goes away. You might hear Armin breathing a little bit harder in the mic. The ringing of the key stops. Monster's left holding the bag and kind of halfway, kind of clutching it and deciding whether or not to open it, not open it, and it's just done. And whatever just happened, it also marked the end of what was in the process of happening. So there was some sort of activity, some sort of event. The structure reacted to it, and then we're past it. It's no longer a current thing. But aside from all that, you know what that felt like. That was the feeling of being on a ship when it fired weapons. There is absolutely no doubt in your mind that that was what you felt. You don't know what the hell it was shooting at, but it was definitely doing something. And we're going to stop there. Anybody still here?
Oh yeah.
All right. I can't. Everyone's very quiet. Everyone's very quiet all night. Okay. So, let's roll down through here real quick. Everyone okay? Everyone's being very quiet tonight. I just want to make sure everyone's all right. And there's more silence. I don't know if that's really.
I mean, it's fine. It's just that, yeah, we did take an hour to open a door, so I'm
sorry about that.
Just letting that ride.
I'm gonna at least try to hide behind the it's been a few weeks, so I'm out of practice. I didn't say I'm out of practice.
Like getting back up to speed is fine. I get that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that.
No, it's entirely fair.
My point is that the last thing I wanted to do was like throw a monkey wrench into that. Like when the truck is turning out of mud, you don't, try to distract
You could be
folks.
doing this another way. Let me go get my shovel and my sand. It'll take me an hour. And I'll be back and we'll get out of this thing quickly. Oh, wait a second. That's not, yeah. No, I get what you're saying. I'm looking at the XP thing for the ship. We are not currently executing a transport or smuggling operation. We are definitely contending with challenges above your current station. We have not developed a new crew reputation or bolstering the crew's reputation or developing a new one yet.
If we fly this ship out of here, we will.
Yeah, I'm saying the goal is definitely there, and expressing the goals drives inner conflict or essential nature of the crew. I mean, you guys are in this mess because of kind of the stuff that's going on with you with regards to the key and what this another fine mess that you find yourself in as a result of that thing. So that's 2 pings for the ship and a playbook advancement that is already plummeting towards completion. There. I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up because I never do that. We haven't any desperate actions for the dock. We didn't get a lot of rolls on this thing. Address a tough challenge with insider compassion. Express your beliefs, drives, heritage, or background. We didn't get a lot of that. I'm not super happy with how some of the session is being reflected and whether or not we actually got the stuff that people are about. You struggle with issues from your vice or trauma during the session, and we don't have a check for that either. I'm a bad GM. All right. Monster. Oh my God. I looked at your stress bar. I'm like, oh, you're about to level. Wait a minute.
That would be nice.
You addressed a tough challenge with force or threats. Yes, check that because you took stress just to solve a problem.
Yeah.
Door. Express your beliefs, drives, heritage, or background. In some way, shape, or form, I'm just going to lay a tick on that just because of how it connects to the key and, getting into this fine mess. Issues of vice or trauma have not come up. Drifter, I'm guessing we're going to have some stuff that will hopefully come up next session, but we may not have a speed or flare. Is not an issue that we've gotten into. There's a bit in here though. The beliefs, drives, heritage, or background. For whatever reason, and I'd like to learn more about this because of what I personally know of Drifter's background doesn't entirely explain how quickly he identified like, oh, that's the kind of logic that goes into designing military ships. Absolutely.
A lot of people in the business that he contacts are ex-military.
Yeah. I mean, no, I'm not saying it's not, but it definitely speaks to your background. A little bit more of that kind of stuff. Being able to, there's something about being able to recognize it so quickly that I think is interesting and stuff. So I'd like to, let's put a tick in there for the, the background and stuff like that, because it's also helped kind of give us some interesting color as to this structure that we found our way in.
Okay, yeah, he's probably got some stories if anybody asks.
Bay's advancement bar is already full. Is that right?
I'm bad about that.
Did you maybe take an advance and then forgot to clear it out?
That's entirely possible. Because didn't I? Yeah, because I just took the tenacious
thing. Okay, so we'll clear that out there. You address the tough challenge with charm or audacity. That hasn't come up yet. Beliefs, drives, heritage, or background. We'll definitely put a ping in there for that. Wait, didn't I have somebody roll desperate?
Mm-mm.
No, it was I did the other thing around with Armin having risky and limited, but it wasn't risky or it wasn't desperate and something. Police stress, heritage, or background. Yeah, we got that, and nobody has vice or traumas because I'm terrible. And Armin, deception or
I don't
influence.
think anything that I did.
It doesn't necessarily speak to the stuff you have going on right now with your guy, which means I have failed this city, or at least 2/5 of it. All right, so apologies all around there. Need to get look at people's playbook advancement stuff and start aiming some stuff at that for next session. So we find ourselves on what is, regardless of whether or not it's a ship, certainly something that was meant for a wartime footing God knows with what. And heading towards the center of the what should be the command deck. As we head towards that, our clock for getting in and getting the thing is about halfway, and hopefully the floating base doesn't become a big thing. There may be another clock, but that's one that can be moved back and forth. That has to do with these weird after images that are happening in here. So we will proceed.
Now, is that part of Wake the Deep, or is that something different?
It is not Wake the Deep. This is see, silly little humans with crappy technology that can't even get off their own little rotating ball of rock simply have to worry about weapons that can leave radiation that can make a place uninhabitable by humans for several centuries. These guys have weapons that leave, like, you know, what if the body outlines on the walls at Hiroshima could scream at you? And still do regularly.
You know, it's sort of like, you know, putting your enemies' heads on a pike.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't want to have to do this fight because what you're gonna have to live through later. So that's fun. So yeah, lot to unpack there, lot to figure out what the heck is going on in this space. So there you go. More to come. Things to unpack and that kind of stuff. And I think we're good for next week. Are we good for next week?
Yeah.
Get back to a regular
Believe
schedule
so.
a bit.
And asking for Mike Joyce, what are you doing Saturday?
What am I doing Saturday? Nothing? Maybe. Let me look. I'm gonna stop recording here, but then we'll go and look.